it just was doing not good things. And I did not want to go to a medical doctor because I just knew they would give me a cover-up pill. I didn't want to get onto that sort of thing at all. When I learned it was garlic and cayenne. Cayenne is a healer. It is a wonderful herb. I said, I think I'm onto something here. I'll tell you, I wouldn't be without it. It did wonderful things for me.
Extendivite is only $69.95 for a 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid. Call now. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Oh, yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Machine. Yeah, the story behind the story coming to you live tonight from the crossroads, so-called, of the West, the incredibly beautiful Wasatch Mountain Range here in Utah. Joining us again on the show, we have Major Burdock from the Philippines and Philip Fairbanks as well from the Philippines. I believe we have Jim with us as well from the Golden State. Jim's been suffering from a little bit of cough and cold, like he started coming down with the last week. I thought he was just kind of choking on some of the things I was saying, but no, it turns out he's got some kind of a bug going on. But welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. This again is The Story Behind the Story. I'm your host, Dr. A. Truott. Yes, the story behind the story has been a long-running informational and educational and hopefully entertaining radio show. We've been doing this since, actually started this in the late 80s, actually 87, 88. So do the math. I mean, 30 years seems like a long time, but in some ways it's a very short time. My original co-producer and I, a fellow named Warren Anderson, we began to broadcast on a Thursday afternoon at little KSUB Radio in Cedar City, Utah. Now, the format was simply a 2-hour format, story behind the story, subjects that the mainstream media just, for whatever reason, didn't want to talk about, that we just kind of fleshed it out. And we're talking things from, the Skinwalker Ranch in northern Utah to the Area 51/Groom Lake phenomenon in Rachel, Nevada, just not very far away at all from Cedar City. We had quite a successful run. We were nominated actually in our second year for a Peabody Award for excellence in small market broadcasting. We did not win the Peabody, but we were nominated, which is a great honor, I think. But I tell you, you're controversial. You're successful when you are controversial. When the bevy of hate mail, if the really nasty mail is kind of on an even par with the great job guys, you're doing some doing the good work. You kind of have a balanced plate. We've been not afraid to tackle such arcane subjects as flat Earth. Yeah, thank you, our producer, Dominic Rodriguez. Dominic is always with us, no matter when he's not with us. He's traveling abroad, traveling this great expanse of a plane instead of a planet. Dominic is no slouch, ladies and gentlemen. He's a smart man, gifted man in many ways, and he's the one that first said, "You got to check into this," and meaning the flat Earth thing. And I said, "No, I don't. I do not." My co-host at the time, Alex Studer, kind of said, "Yeah, you do. There's something to this." I said, "No. Got 1,000 things I could think of rather than do this." But it's really been a great eye-opener to learn about, because learning about the what I call biblical cosmology, what the Bible has to say about how this Earth is made and how it's put together, versus what science has to say, and astronomy and Copernicus and others. It got me to study things like the toral field of a magnetic. What makes the North Pole? What makes the compass point to the North Pole, especially, and even if you're in New Zealand or the land down under, Australia, or even if you're at the bottom of the so-called Earth, call it the ends of the Earth if it's a planal Earth, but if it's the South Pole or polar seas, the South Pole where the penguins live, right? Why is it that the compass points north at the southern Antarctic ice shelf? Well, I submit, ladies and gentlemen, that learning magnetics, I got this 6-inch diameter sphere, a magnetic ball. This thing is way cool, pushing 20,000 Gauss, roughly 42 pounds of pull. I mean, this thing, you roll this thing along, you can imagine what kind of stuff you pick up. Oh my goodness! But as I also have a polar tester. This was really an eye opener to me, because this little machine, it'll push the button and it'll beep a red light when you're over the north polarity. And if you on the southern polarity, you will have a beeping south pole. And then I also have another little device that works exactly like a magnet. The little dial on the front will point to the northern pole, and then when you go to if you flip the magnet, it will point south, the southern polarity. North Pole, South Pole, every magnet has it. Every magnet has it. Let me repeat it. Every magnet has a South Pole and a North Pole, or you don't have a magnetic field. So we have North Pole. We have something called an equator, which is the midpoint on this, what science wants to tell us is a spinning globe. But wait a minute. I did this on my ball magnet, my global ball magnet. And you know what's amazing? Yeah, you'll find that there is a midway point on this ball magnet where the flux field, the torus field, switches from north to south pole. Past the equator, the equatorial midpoint line on this ball, my compass points to the south pole. Wait a minute. On a flat plane magnet, at the edge of my flat plane magnet, my compass points to the North Pole. I turn and flip it over, and suddenly I have a South Pole, and the edge of that is also pointing as a South polarity. I'm just saying, folks, maybe the magnets tell the story too. I don't know. It's just one thing above all the other things that Dominic said. Look at this. Dominic flies gliders. I got to tell you this, listeners. He flies gliders, and he told me, he says, "Dr. Rod, look, I'm up in my glider, and it's absolutely quiet. He's floating along over the ocean, and he's taking pictures of the horizon from his glider, and yep, it's flat as a pancake. Folks, the bottom line here is it doesn't matter what science says. What matters is what you think about it, what you observe, what your brain tells you versus what the programmers want you to believe. And believe me, this is a program, because, you're taught to think the earth is a globe because of the story of Columbus. As a kindergartner, you see this spinning globe on the teacher's desk. Everybody that has any degree of education is telling you that this is a spinning globe at 1,000 miles an hour, yada, yada, yada. And yet, if you dare to question it, you're put into some kind of a remedial type of, you're a crazy kid. Well, what's the matter with you? It must be your parents. See, we're taught what to think, not how to think, and not to observe and see, like Dominic saw. He said, Dr. Ott, I'm out here on the ocean and flying in my glider, and it's flat as a pancake. Well, my initial response was, Dominic, you need to get alive, man. Everybody knows it's a curvature. Come on now. But I did look into it because I respect Dominic's mind and his loyalty to me in this show. If he said there's something to it, I thought I had to check it out, and I'm so glad I did. And Alex Studer, if he was here, to tell you the same thing. Alex went, like he does with everything, he glommed onto it 100%, realizing it is the biggest lie on earth, and we have to sit there and find the truth in all things. Well, I want to just segue into what I wanted to talk about, and I just want to pass the ball off to my worthy co-host now, Philip. I'm sure I'll have some ideas about this, and Major Burdock and Jim as well. Please. We have headline news here, especially in Utah, but across the country. There's 9 innocent mothers and children in Mexico were gunned down by a ruthless drug cartel, a competing drug cartel. Now, this, in case you don't know, these are what's known as the LeBaron group. The LeBarons are the ancestry of Ervil Baron and others that came away broke away from Mormondom. Actually, they broke away from the breakaways. Let me just give you a bit of background history, folks. The Mormon Church, the mainstream Mormon Church, had received a revelation by Joseph Smith and Brigham Young, the founding first two great prophets of Mormondom, declaring that you must have multiple wives to be an exalted God when you grow into godhood. You must have at least 3 wives to populate through celestial sex, populate your own planet as you begin to grow. Again, there's the planet, there's the whole expanding universe type of nonsense. Okay, so Mormons have always believed that, and Brigham Young and Joseph Smith taught that in a very high level in most sacred places of Mormondom, the Mormon Temple. The Mormon Temple in Nauvoo, Illinois, which was short-lived, but the Mormons came to Utah and began building temples in Utah, and the temples are all over this flat plain, folks. They're just all over the place. Now, why is this important? Because you see, in the political landscape began to change, and by the time the Transcontinental Railroad came and at a place here in Utah called Promontory Point, the Golden Spike was driven. The Union Pacific met the Southern Pacific Railroad, and suddenly the nation was suddenly not so big anymore. It was much easier to travel from east to west. And so what happened is people began to realize that, man, there's this really quirky group of individuals out here believe in multiple wives and polygamy. It became an absolute morality issue with Christian people across the nation. They say, well, because the stories became legion of teenage 12 and 13-year-old girls being married off to these 65, 70-year-old old men and forcibly put into something they didn't want. Absolute stories of young love being squashed and dissenting young men who didn't like their lover, their heartthrob, being married to a horny old man, being castrated. I mean, because he dared to buck the priesthood, he had his you-know-what's cut off, okay? These things began to surface, and they were documented. And the media at the time, the newspapers, had a heyday of it. Mark Twain was involved with writing some things about the insanity of this polygamy institution. Long story short, the Mormon prophet Wilford Woodruff began to realize they would never be allowed statehood. They would never be allowed the benefits of being admitted to the United States of America as long as polygamy became enshrined as their icon. So Wilford Woodruff had what's called a manifesto saying, no, we'll no longer practice polygamy officially. But for 30 to 40 years, 3 to 4 decades, they still did this covertly. Call it the covenant. They did it quietly. And so federal marshals began to come and to look into things, and arrests were made in Utah for practicing polygamists who publicly declared and basically lied that they weren't doing it, but in reality they most definitely were. And so there became a group of individuals who refused to abandon what they called the principle. These individuals went outside of the state of Utah in a border town called Short Creek on the Arizona-Utah border. Now, these polygamists they realized they have to keep the principle alive, which they believe was divinely given to Joseph Smith, the founding prophet, and Brigham Young made it very clear you can't enter God's celestial kingdom without this principle. So they began to do their own temple endowments in their little Short Creek community, and they even brought out their own prophet, seer and revelator, who had the sealing keys of eternal marriage. Eternal marriage, ladies and gentlemen, is, according to Mormon doctrine and covenants, celestial marriage is simply polygamy. It's ridiculous that they're now teaching that you just go to the temple and be sealed for time and all eternity as a husband and wife, when in every instance of the original Mormon scriptures, it's polygamy that's the celestial marriage. In other words, you're not going to be together forever unless you have multiple wives, because you have to have these, according to Joseph Smith, to populate with spirit babies this planet that you're going to be given as you're exalted and become a god over your own planet. That's Mormon theology 101, folks. So here's this group in Short Creek, Arizona, who went along pretty darn well until about the 1930s, 1940s. Following World War II in the early 1950s, the rival people that came in, the LeBarons for one, the Kingstons or another group, began to foment discord. They say, we're more righteous than the Johnsons or whoever. And they had there was bloodshed over this. And they left the Short Creek hotbed and went south, the LeBarons did, into Mexico, old Mexico, Chihuahua, and the Sonora area just south of Arizona and El Paso region. Okay, so here's the point, folks.
Just wanted to throw that in as a sound effect.
Okay, here's the point. Getting to the point, folks. Polygamy is founded in illegality and immorality. That's the bottom line. The polygamists in Short Creek, the polygamists in Chihuahua, Mexico, will do anything and everything to make money. And in fact, if you ever like that HBO great series called Big Love, you see they went into this. The people that gave them their content for stories, they knew the whole situation, that Mormon covert closet polygamists, right, are really some crazy folks who have major ties to underworld figures, mafia figures, and drug trafficking. Now, let me just point that I'm sure I'm going to upset some people in Utah and Mexico and whoever else. But listen, folks, you go down there and you see their lifestyle. They live pretty well. Okay, where are they getting? They're American citizens. They drive fairly new, good-looking SUV vehicles. They drive constantly back across the border because they still have their American citizenship. They come in and occasionally, quite often, actually, almost on a weekly basis, visit their relatives in Arizona. Okay, Colorado City, aka Short Creek, and the Nevada or the Arizona-Utah line. My point is this. Don't think for 1 minute they're not a perfect cover, the perfect beard for cartels to be using them as drug mules. Now, I know this because I actually interviewed one of what's called so-called lost boys, who they were basically boys that were competition for the old man of the polygamous so-called fundamental Mormon groups. And so they were basically kicked out of the community just without any means to make a living. And so some of these boys started to blow whistles. They were the original WikiLeaks type of thing, Mormon leaks. One individual that I talked with in depth when I was still doing the story behind the story in Cedar City gave a full-scale story of the illegal smuggling that was going on between Colonial Juarez, Chihuahua, the Mexican, and bringing all these drugs in. Well, we had a private investigator named Sam Brewer, who's written a book and actually done a movie called Prophet's Prey. Sam Brewer dug into this because, of course, we want the ICE, eventual, Immigration and Customs notified, and the Border Patrol. How are you going to stop these illegal drugs? They just kind of just look the other way because, you see, it's a political thing. We don't want to be attacking these religious persecuted people, see. Oh, my goodness. Now, we have President Trump coming up and says, oh, well, these are poor, wonderful American citizens. They were targeted. No. The Mexican reports and investigated, it's very clear. This rival cartel group knew exactly who they were. They knew exactly what they were doing. It was not accidental crossfire. They were targeted. My point in all this is why. I submit, yeah, these children are innocent, surely. And yes, the women probably are innocent. But see, the polygamist women are not allowed to question Papa. When the priesthood of the Mormon fundamentalists is declared, the women just absolutely look the other way and do not question. So it's a perfect cover. Imagine coming across the border, the check station. Here's Mama and all these kids, a minivan or a SUV completely full of these little kids, and Mama in her pioneer style dress and these poligs, go wave them through. What a perfect cover! Remember Clint Eastwood did the show called The Mule about the 90-plus-year-old real life drug mule for the cartel and how he set all the records because nobody believed this old man to be a drug mule. That's what they look for. Okay, I'm just saying that it's a tragedy. The women and kids. It's clearly to me the rival cartel was sending a message to the priesthood brethren. Hey, we're serious about cutting down your drug trafficking. I'm just saying. There's that's my story behind the story. There's no other reason for them to not only shoot, but shoot them up with automatic weapons. I mean, just absolutely overkill to the point where the vehicle catches fire. Anyway, that's the hot topic to me right now about because I'm here in Utah. Everybody's talking about it. Oh my goodness, we got to stop this. These terrible drug cartels. Yada yada yada. These poor innocent Mormon fundamentalists. Go ahead.
Let's take a look at Ervil LeBaron. And by the way, hats off to Dom, and everybody should read The Greatest Lie on Earth. And he's Edward Hendry has been on this show, and you don't have to be a flat earther to appreciate some of the scientific arguments that you were talking about. The one that struck me is the laser level measurements on Lake Tahoe. And I mean, we'll just leave it there. But I'm looking at Ervil LeBaron right now, and I got a list of all the people that he's married and how many. It's pretty sad because all of this is like, what was his wife? What age did he marry her at? And were they murdered? Were they imprisoned? Or did they escape before 1992? And this guy, he was busy. Okay. I mean, he behaved like a cartel member. When you take a look at how many people have died and how many people in his family killed other people and then went to testify and they got killed because other family members from other wives that he had went and killed them. And I mean, groups of people would visit these folks. And I mean, it's just like, I mean, Vonda White, Deborah Bateman, Linda Johnson, Rosemary Barlow, Christina Jensen, China with she disappeared, and she had a bunch of kids, and they think that her sons killed her. I mean, I don't know what kind of freak these guys got with their God on, but they got the wrong notion of Jesus Christ. Let's just say that if you're having brother kill brother and whatnot. But yeah, I don't think Trump is right to say, oh, this wonderful, beautiful family was put in this way. I think you're absolutely right. It makes perfect sense that, I mean, given the history of this family and what they believe, I mean, it's totally conducive with drug trafficking and the behavior of cartel members. So anyway, that's what I had to chime in. It's a beautiful day in Manila, and I think we have Phil here. And I mean, actually, we all came up, because y'all went through daylight savings time, and we don't do that over here. And so, somebody mentioned yesterday, it's daylight savings time, and okay, wait, we spring forward, fall back. Okay, yeah, all right. Just be safe. I'll be up at 9. And of course our studio is awake at 8 to rebroadcast this show. But anyway, we're certainly awake and ready this time, Dr. True. And thanks again for having us on.
It's a real pleasure. I got to tell you, this has been about a decade or so ago. I was, longer than that. I was involved with a lot of the Hopi elders on Second Mesa down in Hopi land in Arizona. Beautiful, beautiful people living so simply and so pure. When, there was Arizona actually passed a state memorandum. They don't do daylight savings time anymore. And I was talking to one of the Hopi elders about the concept, and he just looked and he smiled, and he had kind of a toothless grin. He was pushing 90 plus years old, and I asked him what his thoughts are. He goes, "Only a wise man thinks he can lengthen a blanket by cutting off ends of the blanket."
Wow. And you know what's interesting? What you were saying before, I spent some time working for the White Mountain Apache tribe, and the Sunrise, which is it's a ski resort in Arizona. Most people don't think that you can ski in Arizona. It's not a big mountain, and you can't compare it to, like, say, Sun Valley or, Lake Tahoe. We've got a number of resorts over there, but it's the closest place if you want to go skiing in Mexico, and skiing is something that rich people do. And I knew some property developers and people that had condos over there, and you're talking about all of these really expensive SUVs that are coming up from Mexico, and you're looking at all of these people that are coming in, especially during the winter, with these really expensive SUVs with Mexico license plates. And they are flooding that whole area. Now, it's great that they're spending pesos or dollars or whatnot, but when in the off time, we would get creepy loads of people with like a truckload, a van full of all of these white people that are going into these condos that the Mexicans own, and the children look socially digressed. They look fearful of the world, of the outside world. It's almost as if they've gone through some sort of trauma. And it was just interesting because the guy, the Mexican, owns it. But these vanfuls of very large families, and they're all, kind of dressed in the same clothing, and they don't talk to anyone. They're socially inept people. And I don't know, is that a perk, a vacation getaway for, running 2 tons across the border? I don't know, but what you're saying makes sense to me, Drew.
Well, I just, the underbelly of Mormonism, they have a great public relations department. They're great at spinning, make it look so wonderful, all these wonderful families. And for the most part, the mainstream Mormon faith, they are good citizens. They are very hardworking, and for the most part, they are honest people. But I got to say, with a big beat, this is window dressing, because you really look at what's going on in Brigham Young's Utah. I got to say, and again, I know because of my pioneer heritage. My maternal great-great-grandfather was the territorial marshal of Utah under Brigham Young, and he left a diary, he left a journal, and he left papers. And I'm reading through this, compiling this into a book of the life of Joseph Leland Haywood, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, let's be objective here. This is like an enforcer, nothing worse than a dirty cop, and oh my goodness, the whole thing that stunned me was this whole section of paperwork where he was ordered by Brigham Young to go down to southern Utah from Salt Lake and inventory and bring under armed guard the, shall we say, remnants, the wealth of the Fancher wagon train that was killed by Mormons in 1853. Now, why is that significant? Because you see, all the time, until I saw this document, I, like every other trusting, naive, believing Mormon, had bought the lie that this was an Indian massacre, that the Paiutes did all of the dirty work. And this is one of the supposedly most well-documented treasure stories, because, see, the Fancher descendants still in the southern states of Arkansas and places, they knew that the family and the relatives of the others had sold their plantations, and sold them because they were basically anti-slavery. They want to get out of the South, and so they had over $200,000 in gold, United States gold and silver coinage, in a communal strongbox. $200,000 in $50 gold pieces mostly, and it's just disappeared because the darn savage Indians didn't know what it was. They probably dumped it somewhere in a dry wash. So this was, a lot of people were looking for this buried, hidden treasure with all kinds of sophisticated metal detectors, even aerial spots. And I got to admit, I was part of looking for this too, because it was missing. $200,000 in 1853 coinage is worth a lot of money. And it's the richest lost treasure story that's well documented. Well, here I have the evidence that Joseph Leland Haywood, my ancestor, brought the whole thing to Brigham Young and gave it to him, and there's a receipt for it. Do you think that changed my paradigm a little bit? Okay. Oh my heavens! I looked there, and I showed this to my good mother and my cousins, who were very much involved in what's called the church education system, or CES, of Mormonism. And they were so, we can't, this is not good. You got to destroy. You got to shred these documents. What? Shred history? Are you kidding me? No. Truth is truth. We can't. Now listen, I went to an attorney over it because I was troubled by this. You see, do you know, guys, there's no statute of limitations on murder. You know that? And there is no statute of limitations for being an accomplice to murder. Now, what defines, I asked my attorney friend, what constitutes an accomplice to murder? Well, simply if you don't even need to know it's money or gain from a murder, but if you profit from it in any way, you become an accomplice after the fact. In other words, if somebody comes in and robs a bank for $1 million in cash and shoots the tellers and shoots up in a getaway and kills people, and he comes out and he hands you the suitcase and you take it home and you find it's worth millions of dollars in there. If you don't turn that in, if you continue to hide it and spend it, you're an accomplice to murder after the fact. You will be tried as if you were murdering. Okay, this is all part of the criminal code. So I said, well, so if hypothetically, if something like this went down in 1853, what makes people still an accomplice after the fact? Well, if you find out the truth and continue to hide it, you become an accomplice. Do I want to become a murderer? Legally and morally and ethically? No, I wouldn't. So I said, I'm not going to continue to. I told this to my mother and my relatives, my cousins. I said, think about this, guys. This has been lied about and covered up. And where does it stop? We got to stop. And I say, publish it. I say, call a press conference. Let's get it out there. Oh, no, we can't hurt the church. Well, the truth is the truth. No. They says, we won't allow you to do that. We won't do that. Well, I says, guess what, guys? It's in my safe deposit box, okay? It's in my safekeeping. And I'm not going to have you shred it. It's not going to happen. Well, that's when the feces hit the oscillating fan blade, man, because I was called in to the church headquarters, Mormon church headquarters in Salt Lake, and given the Riot Act, we know how to take care of people that think they can hurt the church. Well, are you threatening me? No, we're just declaring that God's kingdom will never be damaged by people like you, so do the right thing and stay happy with us, right? Oh, it was unbelievable. Okay, so here's what happened. I got to tell you, I went down to the site of the Mountain Meadows Massacre, as it's called, the site where this terrible tragedy occurred. And I was in the family pressures, the pressures of doing the right thing for the right reasons versus, really potentially damaging an institution, a church that I loved. I did. It's our life. So I was saying, well, I was praying to God for guidance on this. And as the sun was setting there, I was in this little side wash. There's a nice little stream, a creek that goes through the Mountain Meadow Massacre site. And I'm sitting there as the sun setting, and I was listening to the birds. And I was kind of halfway, into a deep rest, almost sleep mode. I was tired, and it was so peaceful. And I was resting, and I swear, as God is my witness, I heard what sounded like a busload of kids, for long last truth with truth. The IRS, Internal Revenue Service, and the Federal Reserve is not federal. They're not government employees. No. They're private for-profit corporations. Now, here's the reality, folks. In 1921 or 22, during the Roaring 20s, when this economic boom was greatest, the banks were lending money, Wall Street was going crazy. It was the Roaring 20s. The Mormon hierarchy in Salt Lake City, President Heber J. Grant, and was then Apostle Heber J. Grant, actually, he said he had a revelation in the Mormon Masonic Temple, okay, in Salt Lake City, that he should put everything the church owned into sugar. And in fact, part of Salt Lake City, a suburb of Salt Lake, is still to this day called Sugar House, because it was all sugar processing. In fact, Utah and Hawaii, UNH sugar, UNI sugar, Utah and Idaho sugar. The money put out by Wall Street for the Mormon hierarchy to corral and absolutely corner the sugar market is reality, folks. They did then, they still do now. Well, what happened was this: during the Great Depression, when the stock market crashed in 29, during the 30s, nobody could afford to buy sugar. And so it's a fact. The Union Banking Corporation, John D. Rockefeller's bank, through Heber J. Grant's intermarriage connections to Wall Street Jews, okay, Wall Street Zionists, I should say, created this lending. They put everything, they mortgaged everything, including Temple Square in downtown Salt Lake City, for the sugar loans that they took, and they defaulted. It's fact. It's part of the records of the Mormon Church General Conference and the Financial Records Division, which is a Saturday evening priesthood session. You go back and look at it, man, they were the most incredibly terrible reading. They were defaulting. Do you think Rockefeller and Union Banking Corporation would give the Mormon Church a free pass? They didn't any other corporation. Why should they do it with the Mormons? And the fact is they didn't. They reorganized and restructured the corporation in the First Presidency for a takeover. It's the Zionist Wall Street Jews of today that own lock, stock, and barrel Mormonism. That's who owns it. That's why it's not public. That's why there's no records that you can't. A good Mormon, a good tithe-paying Mormon cannot go into the bishop and demand a consolidated financial report. They should be able to, by any law in the books. Anybody that has a nonprofit corporation, any member in good standing, demands a financial record that's audited and done under GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. It's by law they should have it. But man, if you as a Mormon do that, you will be in danger of being kicked out of the church for daring to question such a thing. Or worse, they'll send some goon squad up to break your bones. That's the reality of Mormonism. The good Mormon people don't care that they don't know where the finances are. They don't know who the stockholders of the corporation of the First Presidency are. They don't care. See, the church owns a consolidation called the Corporation of the First Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Nobody knows who the stockholders are. Boy, I tried to find out. And I'm a pretty good investigative reporter. I can dig, and I dig. Oh my goodness, I dug a little too deep, and I got it. I got told in no uncertain terms, you keep doing this, you'll end up in jail. We'll make you go to prison over this. Why? Why is it so secret? See, it's Zionism, folks. Mormonism and Zionism is the same thing, and they want to control the world through their contacts in Israel and Tel Aviv. So you look behind the scenes of the big church office building in East Temple in Salt Lake, you'll see that there are people there operating behind the scenes who are completely non-Mormon. They belong to a cult called Judaism. Why is that? You know, why does the Mormon Church get an absolutely incredibly beautiful plot of land on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, in the Holy Land, where they build their huge Orson Hyde Memorial Gardens and BYU Near Eastern Studies Center. See, why? Because Orson Hyde, you see, was a crypto Jew who was a Jewish rabbi who came in and became a Mormon apostle. And Joseph Smith sent him to Palestine, and there under the priesthood of the Mormon Church to dedicate the Holy Land for the Zionist return of the wandering Jew. Now, the reality is, folks, today's modern Jews are no more the children and sons of Abraham. They're just not. They're Khazarian. They're Ashkenazim. 98% of world today's Jewry goes back to King Butar and Genghis Khan, not Abraham. That's the big scam. In fact, if you know biblical structure, you know that the bloodlines of Genghis Khan and the Khazarian kingdom goes back to something called Gog and Magog, the hordes of the north that would come and put the world under total condemnation before Jesus Christ's return. Hello, it's what's happened. They're in control of the Holy Land. They want to control the world. That is Gog and Magog. That is Mormonism. And at its core, Gog and Magog, you see their god is Baal/Satan/Lucifer. It's devil worship. This is why we talked about it last week. Why the finders are CIA or Mormon people. It's satanic ritual worship, folks. And Mormonism is up to their eyeballs. Even the polygamous outreach, whether it's the LeBarons or whether it's Warren Jeffs and his craziness. I mean, I tried to tell this to Sam Brower. I mean, Sam just climbed up. I can't talk. You know, he did this best-selling book and the documentary series Prophets Pray. And he won't even discuss. I said, "Come on, Sam, you're a private investigator. You think outside the box. Why did Warren Jeffs ascend to the number one when he was fugitive Warren Jeffs? Why was he number one on the FBI's most wanted list? For marrying some underage kids? You know, he was homosexuality is not sinful, and going to the furthest, I mean, this is what really bothers me. They intimate that John the Beloved was literally the beloved with Jesus. They were partners. Now, come on, people.
No, I mean, if it's a sin to take the Lord's name in vain, what do you think is going to happen to you when you become God and start pretending to write like Him?
And so I just left. Yeah, I said to these good folks, I said, there was men and a woman. I said, it seems to me like you're focusing too much on the kingdom and ignoring the king. And they had their jaw drops, and they says, well, the kingdom is what it's all about. I said, no, the king is what it's all about. You need a relationship with the king of kings, Lord of lords. When you do that, you'll see that you hold his word sacrosanct and holy. You just don't change it. Don't go out there and twist it into making something that you can hold on to and forming a kingdom halls and all this. You don't need it. And I got to tell you, knock on the door, and here's two of the sister missionaries, sweet little gals, come in. And I sat down and said, their pitch, their sales pitch at the door was, we have a message that you have to hear about the restoration. Okay, I said, okay, what restoration? They didn't know who they were dealing with. Bless our restoration. Wow, I'd like to hear about. Can you restore anybody that's losing hair? No, we're talking about the restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Well, I sat him down, gave him some lemonade. I said, Sister so-and-so, she's a senior companion. I said, restoration. What does that word mean? Well, it's restoring something that was lost. Okay. Let's talk about that. Yeah, let's discuss that. I said, who is Jesus Christ? Is he God Emmanuel? According to Isaiah, was Isaiah smoking crack when he said that he was coming, the Messiah would be God with us, Emmanuel. I mean, God the Creator taking flesh, becoming the Word, as John chapter 1 says, the Word made flesh. I says Jesus Christ is not some created being, okay? If you believe the Bible at all, Jesus Christ is the Creator. He made all things. John knew it. Now let me ask you this: Satan is a fallen angel. Angels are created beings. Do you think for 1 minute that Satan has more power than the Creator? Like Isaiah said, can a vessel on the potter's wheel become greater than the potter that fashioned it? Absolutely not. You can't go above the Creator himself. That's where it all begins and that's where it ends. He's the author and finisher of our faith. Let me get this very clear to you, late sisters, please. You're saying by restoration that for 1,800 years or so, until the advent of Joe Smith, gospel of Jesus Christ was lost? That Satan had more power than Jesus Christ to keep us from people's? I mean, please, no. Restoration, no. The reality is the gospel has never been lost. It's always been here. You just have to know where to find it. I'll leave this with you. Thanks again, Major. God bless you, listeners. It's been fun tonight. We kind of hit it hard, but Philip, I'm sorry you were muted. You weren't censored, my friend.
Oh, dang. Hey, God bless you too, True. Thanks for having us on, True. Love you.
Was that you or is that Philip?
Well, that's Philip right now because I got to speak for him.
You're terrible.
He's on the chat right now. He's really mad at me. I'll have to go buy him a drink.
Well, give my best to Jim. We'll be seeing you next week. God bless. We'll talk later. Good night.
Need to fucking mute this.